Hook is a 1991 movie directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Julia Roberts, and Bob Hoskins, among many other popular A-list actors, with music scored by the legendary John Williams. Without getting into the deeply troubled production history, the film serves as a sequel to the 1911 novel by J.M. Barrie, Peter and Wendy. It follows an original story about a Peter Pan who grew up and became a boring, mundane adult in a boring, mundane world. Then, once his children are kidnapped by his age-old rival, Captain James T. Hook, he returns to Neverland and regains both his memories of his time spent as the once ageless hero of the original novel, but also regains a spirit that appreciates both youth and always staying young at heart, even as he fully embraces the responsibilities that come with adulthood. The movie was and remains somewhat divisive, with very highly polarized views of the film. Despite that, the movie made a lot at the box office, being the highest-grossing pirate-themed film of all time that wasn't an installment of Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean cinematic disaster pieces, and it has developed a strong cult following that continues up to this day. Myself included. It's actually one of my favorite films of all time, and if you disagree with me, you are objectively wrong. But that's okay. We're not here to review a film. Instead, I'll be talking about the 1992 Super Nintendo game instead. So join me for a closer look at Hook. Ahoy everyone, this is the Hipster Snek, and today I'll be talking about the Super Nintendo action platformer title, Hook. This game is one of many ports of this type, with the Sega Genesis, Sega Game Gear, and Commodore 64 getting very similar titles. And for the games on Amiga, Atari ST, and MS-DOS, those were actually point-and-click adventure titles and completely different despite the names being the same. There's also an arcade game that was a 4-player co-op beat-em-up, and while I want to play it, I haven't had the chance to yet. Someday at least. Anyway, the story of the game follows beat for beat that of the film. But if it's been a while and you've never seen the film, here's a simple breakdown. Peter Pan left Neverland and became Peter Banning, Robin Williams' character of the film, who grew up to be a successful lawyer but a bit of a truant when it came to the family front, with his children Jack and Maggie then being abducted by Captain Hook, and Tinkerbell the fairy assistant forcibly dragging Peter back to Neverland to reclaim both his title and his family. The game does not waste any time, as the instant you start, you'll either watch the very brief intro, or skip it because your recording software causes the title in question to have a seizure for reasons unknown, and then you're immediately thrusted into the game. Yeah, this is one of those games that doesn't even have a means by which to continue where you left off, or even any starting options. Not that it necessarily needs one, as the game is, at best, 3 hours long, but more on that in a little bit. Let's break down the aesthetics first. For starters, the game looks great. It's very stylized, very bright and colorful. Peter Pan himself is clad in his green garb and his animations are fluid and have a lot of personality. His I am standing on the edge of a cliff pose actually kinda reminds me of Sonic the Hedgehog though, as he dramatically frowns at the player. For a guy who can fly, he's got a lot of opinions on this, I guess. And even throughout the first level, where you're training with the Lost Boys, there's a lot of care put into the sprite work. The Lost Boys are vivid and they pop out with stark yellows and blues, and even Thudbutt makes an appearance using his signature somersault to try to catch you off guard. Speaking of enemies, the boss encounters are the showstoppers. They look fantastic. The first level's boss is Rufio, the guy who serves as the substitute hero when Peter was gone, and it really does look like him. The art in this game is phenomenal. This still looks good today, let alone when this came out in 1992. Oh, speaking of phenomenal, let's talk about the music. For starters, Sony did the music for this game, and while John Williams is credited in the cast roll at the end of the game, I'm not sure if that's because he actually assisted with the music, or if it's because several of the tracks in the game are MIDI remakes of music that he made for the original film, or possibly both. But either way, the music in this game is seriously one of the very best video game soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Seriously, I don't have words for how awesome this soundtrack is. I'm just gonna stop talking here for a moment and let you hear a little so you get the idea. Just too cool. And the sound effects are equally effective. The whoosh of the dagger when you attack is satisfying, and the smack of knocking a pirate off the screen makes you feel like a hero. Say what you will, but Sony knew how to make the SNES sound chip sing. And rightfully so. Sony was the company that designed it after all. Fun fact of the day. Mechanically, Hook is one of those games where you'll probably need to practice a little before you completely dominate everything in your path. Essentially, Peter has 3 skills: a melee attack, jumping, and eventually with some fairy dust even being able to fly. But the way he moves isn't always consistent. Specifically, if you're not pressing any buttons, he moves in this frustratingly slow saunter over to wherever it is you're trying to steer him. Holding the Y button, however, makes him pick up the pace, but this comes with some Sonic the Hedgehog physics, where you're trying to about-face causes him to skid to a stop over several paces further than you might have meant him to, and ditto for when landing from a running jump. Hey, wait, maybe that's why he gets so sassy while standing on a cliff edge. That aside, it takes a little getting used to, but the game is built around it so it works. As per flying, you'll see Tinkerbell hovering in place in some stages, sometimes multiple places at once, but hey, details. Standing or hovering underneath her will charge your flying meter. Fun fact, you'll recover a flying gauge faster than you use it up, so if you're flying while in the fairy dust, you'll actually top off quite quickly. This also becomes important because, like all platformers around this time, for whatever reason, we have to have ourselves a couple auto-scrolling stages that will force you to move along consistently. While they aren't terrible, or even the worst of these kinds of levels I've ever played, it does demand that you pay attention at the very least. The general level beat does tend to go from point A to point B, where your points get accumulated, as is back in the era when points were a big deal, but this game doesn't even save scores, so it's literally just for your own satisfaction. However, some levels, like the later game cave levels for instance, are mazes, and you're tasked with working your way through the rather elaborate level design, or how during the pirate ship level there's a sort of maze-like element early on, before it becomes more vertical movement instead. And the boss fights typically revolve around either being quick and moving around the stage, mostly because some of them are very large, or timing your counterattacks by striking just as your enemy is winding up to hit you. The major exception being one particular skeleton boss who throws his head at you, and your sole opening to harm him is to dodge the incoming cranial assault, getting behind him and smashing him in the back. Oh, right, I should mention the one thing that might actually make this game difficult. You have a limited number of hits you can take. To a maximum of 4 leaves, get hit with no leaves left and you are dead. In what might very well be the funniest moment of the game, dying causes Peter to revert to his lawyer-suited self and fall off the screen with this incredibly goofy gulping sound. It's pretty funny the first time you see it. Now, there are items in the level that both restore expended leaves and also one type that adds an additional leaf. And on top of all that, there's also the gold sword, which will behave as a one-hit buffer over the rest of your health while you have it. But there's only like 3 or 4 spots in the game where you can get it, as the sword will also shoot off projectiles when you swing it, making it very, very powerful in a game like this. So if you lose it, just ready yourself to not see it again for a while. Other than that, you swap pirates with your dagger, you collect jewelry for points, fruits for healing, and treat every single enemy with a projectile as the worst thing ever, and you'll be golden. So all that being said, what are the game's flaws? Well, as said, it's short, and it has pretty much no replay value at all, even the name of the scoreboard on account that it doesn't ever actually save that, as said. It's really nothing special, and it doesn't push the envelope in any particular way. But having said that, it's a fun little platformer, quick and breezy, and it won't eat up too much of your time. If you like both video games and the film upon which it was based, it's actually one of those licensed games that is shockingly good for what it is and the time frame in which it was designed. I'm not saying it's amazing or will change your worldview on this sort of thing, but it is pretty good. You should give it a shot if you get the chance to do so. This has been the Lost Snek, traveling back to Neverland for your entertainment. If you liked today's episode, be sure to hit the like button so I know, and leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on the film and the game? I was joking, of course. I really do welcome differences in opinions. And if you want more like this every week, including the new home of the old and upcoming episodes of the Tomodachi Bros podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe and bell icon so you'll never miss a one. And join me here each week from our obscure reviews, indie excellence, snack tech, and more. And I will see you there.